My name is Keith B. Dixon. I'm a commercial photographer. I'm based out of Hayward, California, and I photograph just about, or have photographed just about almost any and everything that you could possibly experience in your career, with the exception of underwater photography. So I'm going to share some photos with you today. I'm going to share a workflow process that I use to not only speed up my editing time, but it also increases my profitability. And the Perfectly Clear product, it integrates right into Lightroom and Photoshop. So I want to tell you that right away. So you can use it out of Photoshop. We're going to just look at Lightroom today, but you can definitely use it right out of Photoshop, and it integrates in. And I'm going to show you how I correct photos, the process I use. And I'm going to cover two terms that you're going to hear about today: the visual edit and a straight-in correction. So those are going to be the nuggets that I hope you walk away with today. And I'm going to show you just a little bit of file structure that I use. Is scalable, which means that it can grow as your image grows, as your images grow, and it works perfectly. Before I dive into this, I want to share my social media with you. You can find me on Twitter, which is my biggest platform. It's about 31,000, pretty active, 500,000 impressions a month, every 28 days. Facebook, examiner.com. I write a lot of in-depth articles, a little bit different than just a review. I really talk about my feelings and how the product, and if I'm reviewing a product, how it works. I talk about a lot of photography related things. Pinterest is another one, and my last platform. All right, so enough of that stuff. Whenever I talk about Perfectly Clear, I always like to tell you what it's not, because I remember when I first heard the presentation, that was a big thing for me, because I didn't want to dive into another product and have to change up my workflow only to find that it was just kind of more of the same. Perfectly Clear is definitely not a filter, a mask, saturator, or distorter. It's none of those things. It's a correction application. And here's the thing that I love about it the most. It's literally in a league of its own, and you'll see that as I go through the product and my workflow. Okay, so here's what it's going to do. It's going to automate your correction process. And I know we get scared sometimes when we hear that word automate. It's a scary thing, especially when you're shooting. You know, you shoot on manual, avoid automatic. But there's some, as a professional, there's some times when auto is just, it's going to be your friend. It's going to lighten your load, so to speak. And that's what Perfectly Clear is going to do for your digital workflow. It fine tunes. So I'm going to be doing a series of these webinars, and I'm going to show you some images architectural images that I've shot. And what I'll do is I'll process those images and then run them back through, just in case, you know, the editing process created a cast or something undesirable in there that I just couldn't really see with my naked eye. And that's the intelligent part of the software that is really your friend in life. It's almost like a life jacket. Batching. Oh my God, I can't say enough for this. If you're shooting a wedding or an event and you have hundreds of images, picking them out is already a task. But if you've got to go through and correct, or let's say you edit down to about 50%, and then you got to go back and try to figure out what exposure is going to work. It's just going to take you forever to get through it. So the batch process and batch processing the corrections, I'm going to tell you, is invaluable in this program, and we'll definitely walk you through that. Okay, so let's talk workflow here for a second. Okay, workflow is critical, and I'm going to share a story with you really quick about a friend of mine's called me up the other day. They were using a storage device, pretty well-known storage device, not Netgear, by the way. As you know, sponsored by Netgear as well. And they said, Keith, you know, this device failed and half the images are on there. I got the other half on my camera. I'm stressed out. What am I going to do? And honestly, your workflow could save you from a situation like that, because, you know, if you're backing up your images and onto another device as you're you're creating your work or after, however your situation is, you can minimize those types of things. And the person ended up working through the situation and they didn't lose any images, but they had to, it cost them an extra $400 to buy another unit to plug those drives back in. So that's the importance of backup. And I'm going to show you how I back up. It's a simple process. There's a million ways to do it, but this is just the way that I do it. Okay, so let's look at a typical workflow. You bring your images in, and I'm hoping this is typical. You bring your images in, as you're importing, you're backing up to a unit, you're working out of Lightroom, you create a master file, you're picking, as you're going along, maybe you're flagging or however you do it, and then you start editing, right? You have that one image it's just so powerful, so compelling. You got to jump on it right then, and the next thing you know, you look down the road and you see, wow, I got like 1,000 more images to go, and I just got hung up on this image for 20 minutes. It's a total disaster. I mean, things just kind of blow up at that point, and you end up getting tired, putting the work down, and basically losing your steam and never getting back to it. Yes, you can outsource it. I'll definitely tell you that, but that costs money, and you know, it's not always the best solution. You lose control, right? All right, so people generally do image corrections and image enhancements in the same vein. Now, some of you might be out there and you might say, hey, look, I can just use an expo disc or a gray card to get my white balance, right? And yes, you should definitely be doing that. That's the in-field correction that you need. On the other hand, right, there's going to be situations you're shooting an event where you're moving from scene to scene. There's no time to do that. So you're going to have to rely on your auto white balance, which is going to give you that interesting 18% gray, which could undersaturate your colors, oversaturate your colors. I mean, it could just create a lot of different situations for you. And that's where Perfectly Clear is going to be your friend in terms of correcting those saturation factors that you just sometimes don't even see because, you know, maybe you shot into a scene and you forgot what it looked like. You got back to the studio, it's like, was that really the color? Those are the kind of things that happen. So they're not the same. Correction and image enhancement shouldn't be done in the same vein. And that's what I want. That's the message. That's the other message that I want to really drive home with you. It's a separate process. Okay. The 3 C's of editing. And this is very important because it's going to help you get through it quickly. And once you get used to it, you're going to start blasting through your images in terms of how you see them and how you edit them, right? So here are 3 things that I look for. I look for contrast. If there's a wide range of contrast, lights and darks, they're so far apart, I'm not going to bother with it because that means that I just probably got the wrong exposure. I didn't see it correctly. Maybe it was not the right situation. Composition. I'm looking for composition, something in the rule of the thirds, the golden mean. That's going to invoke some emotion just by looking at it, right? Is it compelling, right? Well, if it's got these 2, it's probably going to be compelling. Does it meet the specifics of the assignment in terms of, hey, Keith, you got to get people with handshakes, right? Or I want to get people passing business cards, or I want to get the speaker animated. Those are compelling images, and that word compelling can be applied to a lot of, maybe it's a bride and she's going in for the kiss with her new husband, right? We're going to flag those images, and those are the ones we're going to correct. All right, so key, image correction is a separate workflow, and that's the message that I want you to take home with you today. It's a completely separate workflow. Let's look at a file structure. So when we bring our images in, what's happening? How do we do that? What makes sense, right? Okay, so here we have a drive, right? And I'm gonna get out of this screen so you can see my my mouse here, right? And this may be little at this point, but what I want you to see is the file source. So this is where the files are coming in, immediately going into some type of backup, whatever that may be for you, right? I want you to always back those images up. There's nothing worse than having to call a client and tell them you lost their images or your job's going to be delayed because of something that you probably could have done to save that disaster from happening. Then your destination drives, right? And I'm going to show you a live, I'm going to go right onto this unit here, and I'm going to show you a live file structure that I have, right? So here we have, I number mines out front because sometimes it's hard to see two C's together. So I know 100 is always going to be commercial, right? So if I'm looking for that, I'm going to click on commercial, and then I'll just drill it down in a number fashion. So 200, 200 property. 200 property is not going to be the same as 200 consumer, right? And then I just drill it down from there, right? So if we look at, let's say editorial, right? Um, Now we're in the editorial, and I list out the name of the company, the client, and the date that it was taken. So this is off of my travel drive. This is a travel drive that I use, and I keep those naming conventions consistent all the way across. When I'm out in the field, I work off this drive until the job is complete and then transfer it over so I don't get mixed up, even with the Lightroom files. And, right, I create a Lightroom catalog for each job. That way, if a client calls me up, just like a couple days ago, and says, Keith, you took a picture of my family back in 2012, right? I know that I can go to 2012, right, on my drive, on my archive, click on 2012, consumer photos. It was a studio picture, boom, I'm right there, right? What's your name? It's always listed by last name. Okay, so just a little bit of that to help you kind of through how you're going to structure your files. And let me just see if there's any questions here. Okay, you guys don't have any questions yet. I'm going to keep going through this. And I'm going to go right back to the keynote here, right? So there's our file structure, right? You can do it any kind of way. You can name it any kind of way. Some people put dates. There's a lot of ways to do it. The thing that I really want you to see is you're backing up your files. That's the message here, right? All right. So here's our process. You saw the master file, right? We're going to do something called a visual edit. And a visual edit goes right back to the 3 C's. That's going to help you to narrow those files down so that you're not spending a lot of time spinning your wheel, especially with an event, right? You want to process those 200-300 pictures really easy. You want to pick them out, and you're going to either send them into Perfectly Clear through that visual edit or a straight-in edit. And let's just take a look at this really quick. So I'm gonna go over to Lightroom here, and so a friend of mine calls me up one day and he says, "Hey Keith, can you do a photograph of me? And I got this 88 piano, they're rare. I want a shot like that. I want to be sitting in front of my equipment, just looking like I want people to see my workspace. I want them to connect to me in my workspace, right? Here's the original image. I gel filtered it because it was without the gel filter. I mean, it just looked really sterile, right? But when that happens, it creates this dark contrast in the photograph that sometimes mutes the color, right? And this is where Perfectly Clear is magic. And you guys probably seen this in the header, right? This is where the magic is created. So before I even get started, this is going to be this is the only image here, but I'm going to give you a small idea of what the straight-in edit looks like. So if I click on the image, right, on my laptop, and I go edit in Perfectly Clear, right? Perfectly Clear program. I'm going to do this live, right? It's going to bring up this dialog box. I'm just going to leave all this information the same. TIFF. I use Pro RGB. That's according to Adobe. That has more color gamut. Can we see that? I don't know, right? But I use that. It's 240 for the resolution. That's going to be okay. I'm going to click Edit. And there's a couple of different ways you can actually bring up this dialog box, but I'm working on my laptop, and this is the way I do it. When I'm working on my system at home, I actually use Export, and it looks like this, and Athentech, and you just get a whole different dialog box. So there's 2 ways to do that. So let's bring up the app. Now the thing that I love about this the most, and especially for me, I don't have a lot of patience, and sometimes, to be honest with you, I don't want to go through, sit down and read a book. I want it to be intuitive. One button clicks all day long, right? So if I want to fix the tint, you see the vibrance that that image actually, that fixed tint actually brought into the image. So that's before. You see that blue cast in there, and this is after. Just a whole different vibrant situation, right? You see that? And you can explore. Sometimes I know fixed tint, but maybe landscape has an effect that is going to give you something special here. Don't limit yourself. Explore with this, right? Let me move this back here so you can see that. Details, vivid. So it's just going to deepen those colors. Beauty. We're going to take a look at this because I'm going to show you how I created a couple images just using these and adjusting my sliders, right? But for now, because I'm going to use a creative enhancement after this in Lightroom, I'm just going to pick fixed tint. And as you can see, it's really easy, right? You can adjust the individual sliders. We'll jump into that later, right? But for now, I just want to show you how easy it is. There's also presets that you can do, right? So if you like your own presets, you're off to the races, right? So I'm just going to cancel out of that because I actually have the image here and I don't want to waste time waiting for it to load. Here's our corrected image, right? So if we bring these up together, I'm going to go here and I'm going to bring up the corrected image. So I'm just going to flag and then flag the original. Where are you? Okay. See here, master. Oh, there's the original. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and just bring up the corrected image. Here we go, right? And let's say that I'm pretty satisfied with this. I got a little better contrast in my blues, right? Let me reset this here just to make sure. And open that up here. Develop. Okay, we're spinning. Okay, so here's our original file. I'm just going to reset that. And we're not resetting. That's so classic. Right? It's not resetting. Okay, so I'm not going to restart Lightroom. We're just going to kind of power through this. Okay, so here's our program. Here's our final, right? And what I did is I just went into, as you can see, I got a bunch of presets here that I can apply. I just went in, and this is all Lightroom. So we went from the image that you saw originally to this right here, just in Lightroom. So all I did was I adjusted the sliders, the shadows, added a little vibrance, and just kind of worked through it. And I'm done. There's my image. The image that you see on the website was actually I actually took that into Photoshop. So couple different steps, a couple additional different steps that I did, but sometimes it's really hard with these presets because you got to go through and see what's going to happen here. So you end up going through like this, spending a lot of time. It's like, oh my God, like that's just too much, right? And some of them, you see where the grain is coming in, just totally blows through your image, right? So we want to avoid having to do all these extra clicks, right? All right. Let me see if you guys have any questions out there for me. Let me just check and see. Looks like we're doing good here. All right. So let's go to 2. So let's say you're working an event, right? And here's our masters that we brought in. And there's this 20 photos. This is going to be basically a live update. So as a event photographer, sometimes I'll get a client that's like, Keith, we want to upload, we're doing a conference. We want to update photos on our blog, midday, right? Well, I got to shoot the event and then try to do these live updates, right? Which means I got to run in, download the photos, edit them. I mean, it's a feat to say the least, right? Perfectly Clear helps me to kind of cut down on the editing time. The 3 C's helps me to cut down on the editing time because when I look at this and I look at the interaction, I'm just going to flag that. Yep, that works. Okay, so I got a male-female interaction. So I got a female here, male there, just in case they want that, right? Okay, so which one of these are going to work? So I'm just back and forth. You know what? I think I'll take the second one because his face didn't look that great there. It looks a little blown out, right? So I'm going through, okay, I like that. They're having coffee. They're meeting over breakfast, right? I'm also looking at the background here. So if I'm going to choose between these two, I'm going to take the one with the more controllable background, right? Okay, so I already have an interaction photo like that at registration, so I'm just going to blast through that. Let's see here, which one is going to work? This brands it, so I'm going to roll with that. Okay, that looks good. She looks serious, like maybe she could be mad. I don't know. I'm going to bypass that. Intensity at the conference, we have their brand logo in the background, right? Let me see what's next. Okay, that works. She's smiling now. They're having fun at the conference. I'm going to take that one. He's the founder of the conference and the company that sponsors it. Definitely going to take that one, right? A little creative shot, right? I'm going to take that one. And another brand shot. So I'm going to take that one, right? Interaction, they're having a networking meeting on their product. I'll take that one, right? And as you can see, I'm just going right through it. But I'm also looking at the 3 C's in the process, right? I'll definitely take that one, the exchange, the timing, right? So taking these images into Perfectly Clear, right? I can batch this entire set right here, right off the top, right? And it's going to individually correct each one of those images. It's not going to apply this universal fix to your images that you usually see with a lot of programs, and then you have to go back and readjust the images back to where it needs to be. The Perfectly Clear is so intelligent that it really analyzes each single image so that you get the best exposure possible. And that's the beauty in this program. So when we get to the corrected mode, I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to show you side by side, what these images look like. I already ran it through Perfectly Clear earlier just to save time, right? So here's our 2 images, right? You'll notice that there's a depth. Let's just oops, we just escaped out of there. Let's bring up. Let's see here. Make sure we got the right one. Okay, here we go. So this image and this image, and I'm just going to go to library mode. Bring it up so you can see it. Right. Open up the screen. Right. So you'll notice that there's just a different depth of color, a little bit more saturation, right? We look at the next image, right? So let's go through and let's look at this one right here, right? So here's our corrected, here's the original, here's our image that we ran through, here's our original image right here. As you can see, it's a little hot around the edges, but then when we run it through Perfectly Clear, and we batch these all at the same time, so this image is batching with this image, and as you can see, if it's lifting the contrast here, because here's our original image, it's a little dark back there, so the program wants to naturally bring that shadow out, right? Well, if it's syncing universally, right, it's going to do the same thing to this image, which is going to blow out that background, and that's the beauty with Perfectly Clear. It's so intelligent that it knows, you know what, this is a completely different image with a completely different purpose. So you know what, we're going to just knock that down. And it's a patented technology from what I understand. So the algorithms that read into these files, it's patented. And they've been doing it for a little while too as well. Here, remember that image, right? So here's there's the background, and as you can see, we get those rich color saturations. And let's look at one more. Okay, this is an interesting one right here, right? This is difficult because I'm at the back of the room shooting with 7200, right? I got to try to get a flash up front. Here's our original, and then here's our Perfectly Clear image. And when you look at them side by side, I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but his face is just a little richer here than it is here, right? It's just got a little bit more pop on it. See that? There we go. All right. So we're going to look at some photos in Perfectly Clear so you can see. I'm going to run you through the process here. Let's look at one more event. These are some difficult photos. This was shot by one of my guys on the crew, and The thing that I liked about these images the most, right, in terms of how Perfectly Clear managed them, they're just all so different, right? So we got dark backgrounds, right? Um, Let me just open this here, drop that down here so we'd be in the masters, right? The backgrounds are so different. And the thing that I want to show you is with Perfectly Clear. This is a classic because it looks flashed, right? And this one looks this their skin's kind of hot. And the reason why I chose this picture is because I want you to see Perfectly Clear as it's going through analyzing each one of these photos. It's not changing this because it says, well, you know, we're just lightening these up, but if I lighten that one up, they're going to be really blown out. And that's where it gets kind of interesting, right? So let's do a real time correction, right? So I'm going to go here, and this time I'm going to export out, right? And this is going to be part of my workflow. So I hit export. I'm going to go to Perfectly Clear, and um, I'm just going to pretty much leave these settings the same. But what I'm going to do different, right, is I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to select my folder. So in Documents, Presentation, Webinar, and we're at Corporate Event, and I'm going to create a file, and I'm going to call it Corrected. I'm going to call, oh, we got it right here. Just cancel that and just make sure there's some files in there, but right, I'm going to dump all the files in there. So this is now step 2 in my workflow, right? And Perfectly Clear is going to open up. And while this is going, let me just check and see if we have any questions there. You guys, am I that good that you don't have any questions? Or you guys sleep? Did I put you to sleep out there? No, nobody's sleeping, right? So it's processing. I want you to see what a real-time raw file process is like, so that you're not thinking, oh my God, I'm looking at this demo and they have these JPEGs here, and it's going fast. Now that I got these raw files, it's going slow. This is real-time processing. Any questions, you guys? Just go right down to the question dialog box, and I'll be more than happy to try to respond as much as possible. We're about the half-hour mark right now. Um, wait till you see the actual creative edits that I do after we get past this. It's gonna be pretty interesting. Okay, so as you can see, this is the real time for 12. And what I normally do when I'm processing, because I processed about 80 images just a couple weeks ago on a shoot to a client from an event. I'll just process these and go do something else, right? And when I show you a straight in edit correction, right, you're going to see, oh, that completely makes sense. He's editing the photos, but he's not even sitting at the computer, right? So all I'm going to do here, now that our photos is loaded, I'm going to go in, I'm going to right click, synchronize the folder. It's going to bring in my images into the correction phase. And this is the image that I really want to bring up right here, right? You see where it just pretty much left the image the same, right? Here's our corrected images. You notice how it's just a lot richer in terms of, wow. Remember the flashed out image, right? I mean, he's close to the light, so obviously he's going to catch a little bit more of the flash, but it doesn't look so flashed out now, right? And that's one of the benefits of how Perfectly Clear analyzes the image, right? So naturally, when you're photographing something like this, and the person closest to the flash, when they're staggered like that, they're going to catch most of the light. This kind of gave off a blue because we did tint, right? Kind of gave off a blue tint, but we can go in and easily fix that. Brought up our darks here, right? This was our image before, and if we look at them side by side, let's go side by side here, right? So obviously we got this blue tint because I picked tint, right? See the richness there? Well, I like my images to run a little blue, right? I like them cool. That's the style of my images, right? All right. See how that works out there. Definitely a lot better there. right? And you can adjust this however you like, right? But that's how you can batch process your images. And if I was going to, let's say I was going to go straight out to the client with these, right? All I would do is I would just since they're outputting as a JPEG or TIFF, whatever we select when we're using the initial export, right? We go down here. Let's say we want to export that out, so we can rename and we can export that out as a JPEG or TIFF, and we're done. We don't even have to re-export the images, and that's the beauty of it. And that's what I was doing before I actually started using. I would basically edit all the way through, create these virtual copies, and then I'd have to export, 1,000 files out. It was just too many steps, right? So here's a good example of what I call a straight in correction, right? So we're just going to take these images literally, right? And they're perfect on camera. We've already edited on camera. These are going to go straight to the client. All we're going to do is export, right? And we're going to set up fixed tint, whatever we're going to use fixed tint in this case. And all those presets that I showed you in Perfectly Clear are just right here. So everything is right at your fingertips, right? If you have presets, you can use your own presets right out of here if you know kind of what you want. It's going to go into event corrections or for that file. So I have a file that I call correction. So I know that those images are corrected. We don't want to rename it because it's already named, right? We're going to export it out as JPEGs, right? I'm going to check that off, right? Now, here's the great part. I'm going to cancel that out because I'm going to open up Perfectly Clear in just a minute, but I'm going to cancel it out because I want you to see the back end workflow, right? So if we go, let's say we've already made our corrections. Here we go, right? We can shoot these straight out to the client just like this. And here's the corrections right here. And here's the beauty in these. If you're shooting a wedding and the person's skin texture is not as good as it should be, right? Perfectly Clear will analyze that skin texture and fix it for you, right? So let's look at these files together, right? That's Perfectly Clear right there. This is a tough location to shoot in because the light's so low, the wall, everything in there is yellow. So there's the skin complexion. They're going to be happy that you were able to, you see where it even fixes right up underneath the eyes. Watch this. See that? All right. And here we have this scene right here, right? Big difference. And here, and as I mentioned before, I like my images to run a little blue. It's just my style. So it knows exactly how to create or correct your exposure. Now, let's look at Perfectly Clear as at the application. Let me check and just make sure you guys aren't just bombarding me with questions, right? All right, here we go. So here's an event, and this is classic because we'll have a background that's brighter than our foreground. And when you're running around, you're shooting stuff like this, it's very difficult to just try to white balance. So here I have my camera on auto white balance, and I'm going to let the camera do the work. I mean, that's why I pay the money for it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for a situation that I know will work well with Perfectly Clear in terms of the exposure. Because if that was super bright, I mean, there's no program out there that's going to be able to really fix that. It's going to be tough, right? You should be shooting a flash in there so you can balance out the foreground and the background, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this program into Perfectly Clear, right click, edit in, Perfectly Clear, and here I'm just right clicking. You can do export as well. Open up the edit, and you could do this to 100 images, or you could do it to 200 images, 2,000, just whatever you want to do. I want to show you this. I want to show you these processes so that you know how you can scale. So if this was 10 images, you could do it. So there's our fixed tint. We're right there already. We can do something like this, right? We can do something like this, like vivid. but I'm thinking, okay, I like that, right? That's pretty cool. That's nice. And if I needed to adjust, I could actually go in here and make all additional adjustments. We're not going to do that right now, right? So I'm going to just pretend like I saved this, canceled it, and then here's our corrected image right here. I'm just going to make this a little bigger so you can kind of see the power in the program, right? See the difference here? Pretty amazing stuff, right? And if I go in here and I put these images side by side, you can really see where the program is just really intelligent and smart. Big difference. That's going to save you a lot of time in editing. And matter of fact, when I process this job, and here's why this is important. Okay, yeah, you're going to be able to fix your images. Yeah, it's going to be great. But the important thing is it's going to save you money, right? Because if you're this is a low budget job because this is for the YMCA. That it's a YMCA is not for profit. Everything is done on grants. Um, I've got to be able to get this done quickly, and this is how I do it. And that's what keeps me competitive as well, right? So I make the client happy. I can maximize my profitability, right? So that I'm not out there basically doing the old shoot for free thing, right? And I've got a good workflow. Now, let's look at some creative photos. And this is these images. These images are really interesting because we generally want to correct some things and then just take the image up a notch. And I'm going to start with this one right here, right? Okay, so here's an image that I shot of this model. And as you can see, she's got some things going on with her chin right there. And it's pretty serious, right? It's pretty serious. It's a high key, and um, I want to be able to see the edges. I want to see the edges in her hair, right? I want to be able to see the edges in her hair, and that's how I know that okay, I've got good control on my light. If her hair is blown out, then I know okay, this image is probably not going to work because the detail or the detail's lost in the highlights, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. I'm going to open this in Perfectly Clear, right? And all I'm doing is right clicking, Perfectly Clear, opening up, edit, and this is a real-time file, so I'm using a Nikon file. It's a pretty big one too, and that's the thing that I want you to see. So I want you to see live processing time, right? Okay, so here's our image, and here's how we can basically stack because people's like, oh, once I select that, what else can I do? Well, we can do a lot. We could actually choose this beautify, and I like this because if you see where her face is changing, you see that I'm going to enlarge just slightly, right? See her face? It's taking in her cheek lines a little bit, her jawline, her cheeks, right? And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start to play around. And this is literally how I use my sliders. I'll go like this. I want to see the impact, and I'll just go back and forth, so I can see what the impact of that slider is, especially if I'm not familiar with the program. Back and forth, right? Okay, so you see that adjustment there? So I'm going to bring that down because I want it to be super high key. And despite what most people say about portraits, sometimes you can get away with that plastic skin because the portrait just really calls for it. But if you're doing a business card or headshot, you don't want the plastic skin. But in this case, we're going to go for the plastic skin, right? I'm going to click on vibrancy, and it's just to see what it's going to do. Okay, that's not going to work for me. Fidelity, and this is how you're going to basically learn this program in terms of what it can and can't do for your image, right? So there's no tint there, right? Oh, I kind of like that. So you know what? I'm going to turn down the opacity just a little bit, right? You see this stuff in her face right here? This little imperfection. I'm going to go in here to portraits, right? And I'm just going to bump this all the way up just like that, right? You see it starts to disappear. And I'm going to bump the skin tone just a little bit, right? You see where I'm going with this? Basically what I'm doing is I'm just creating, and I'm actually doing a correction, right? But I'm actually enhancing the image in the same vein because this image I can do it, right? So I'm going to cancel this out and I'm going to show you kind of what the final looks like. So, and this was done in a combination. So here's my final image. And what I did is I did some of the correction with her chin, as you can see here, right? I did all of this basically in the program in Perfectly Clear. So we end up with this image. I can still see her hair, right? Still see the edges. So okay, yeah, I got a pretty good high key. I don't have any deep shadows that, you know, are blowing out here. Still see the hair over here, but this is all perfectly clear. And then when I can go in and do in Photoshop is just touch up these little spots right here, right? And touch up under her lip to get it perfect. But this is the type of image I was going for. Okay, plastic skin's not going to work for a professional shot. Okay, not going to happen. So, but in this case, we're going for high key. The image is going to be, you know, super soft and blown out. But this is one of the ways you could use this in your workflow. And I like to do it this way sometimes because when you shoot a lot of images for, you know, like a fashion shoot, sometimes you don't want to send them images where the skin's kind of messed up, but you don't also want to be using or editing 1,000 different photos. And sometimes it takes the client forever to get back to you, and you're already in another job. So I try to send images that are closely edited to their final as much as possible. So here's some other images, right? As you can see, where I've kind of done the same thing, right? You notice her eyes, right? That's all perfectly clear, right? Here, just edit it out, right? Here's another one. So here's an image shot on black, and boom, this is all perfectly clear. No Photoshop, just a little bit of Lightroom, and I'm just going in, I'm just dragging those sliders across, like I had mentioned, dragging them across, seeing what's going to really make this image pop out. And in her case, right, I'm going to show you this one feature that I use for the eyes to really kind of make the eyes pop, right? So I'm going to walk you through this live edit here. Let me just check and see if I got any questions popping up here. Okay. All right. No questions there. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes left, which is good. We're running right on time. So here's the move right here, literally, right? Just that easy. And you can also go in here and check for noise as well. No noise has been detected. How about that, huh? So it'll tell you if the image has noise. It's that intelligent. That was 2 slider clicks, full 100, right? I could get right out of here just like that. There's no, okay, let me select the eyes. Let me select the nose. That was my old process, and it was grueling, right? My portrait sessions now are 10 minutes, right, for a headshot. So the client comes in, they want to do a professional headshot. It takes I take 10 images, 10 minutes, right? They leave. By the time they're literally walking to their car, maybe, right, or getting putting their key in the door, the images are there, and that's how I do it. So if this motivates you, my headshot session is $200. It's 10 minutes, and it takes me 10 minutes to process the images with Perfectly Clear. That's how I stay competitive and profitable. So if they don't want to pay the $200, right? Okay, I'll see you later, because I know that it's streamlined and I know they're going to get the product on time. They're probably not going to be my client, right? So here's that photo, right? I'm just going to click cancel here because I've already finished it right here, right? There's the original, and then here's our final. So, and what I did in Photoshop is I went in and I just kind of brushed out, because what it did when we made these changes is it kind of basically increased the exposure on the blacks, which made it kind of grainy. I just went in and just painted over that in Lightroom with the brush, right? This brush right here, right? Turn it to black, and just, you can see right here, just paint it over, right? We're good to go. All right. Here's another one. This is a Kinsietta, right? Kinsiettas are going to take 1,000,000 pictures. Everybody wants to take pictures, right? So this is all perfectly clear, right? And she's far away, the program is so intelligent. Oops, let's escape out of there. The program Perfectly Clear is so intelligent in terms of how it sees eyes, noses, and faces, right? She's far away, and this is why I like this. This dress is bigger than her face. And when I picked this image because I wanted to see if Perfectly Clear could basically adjust the eyes, and that's where this is great. So let's go in here. I'm gonna stay in develop mode. Let's go 1-to-1, right? I'm gonna drag this down, and I want you to see. Now I'm hand holding this camera. I'm at a distance. There's gonna be a little bit of grain, right? But the thing I want you to really see in this picture is her face. Look at that. You see where it's that's amazing because she's so far away, could still detect her eyes, her nose, and her teeth. Isn't that's amazing? Um, Here's another one, right? Um, Usually when you're working with a celebrity, they want to see a million pictures. Like it's insane, right? You don't want to send them a million pictures because they'll actually post them, right? And they might be unedited. So you want to be close to an edit as possible. This is all. So here's my a look that I usually do with portraits, right? So I'm just running it through Perfectly Clear, look, giving her a look, right? You notice the color saturation. So the light is creating this contrasty kind of feel, right? And I need Perfectly Clear to take that out. I don't have time to sit there, and as you can see it here, right? I don't have time to sit there and adjust sliders or guess whether or not my universal fix worked. I don't have time to do that. Here's another one. So here's the original image coming right out of Perfectly Clear. And I'm literally coming out of Perfectly Clear and delivering the image, the proofs, right, in this case. And I might go in and touch them up after the fact once they pick them, look for dust and all that kind of good stuff to make sure. Sometimes we miss that. But I'm coming from the original image out of camera. I'm submitting that as the proof, and we're rocking and rolling. Um, this image actually, Adidas picked this image up. This was shot for an Adidas campaign, and they went with this one and another one, you know, for these shoes that they're wearing. And the interesting thing about this image is I try to shoot as perfectly in camera as possible, right? But when I have an image like this, sometimes I'll run it through because there could be a cast in here, right? Most of the time I'll white balance, right? I'll white balance this out. But I want to submit images to her with a clean face. You know, there's no you see the little highlights and imperfections in there. I want her face to look really good when I submit the proofs, right? And one of the things my clients generally tell me is, Keith, oh, we had a hard time picking out the images, right? That's a good sign, right? And that's one of the ways that I do it. So I submit good proofs, and one of the ways I do it is I correct them, right? I correct the images with Perfectly Clear. All right, so remember I was telling you about the studio image, right? So here's an example. Client comes in, and I like to say they're packaged. Their hair is ready. They got makeup on. They're looking good. But you notice there's some things going on underneath her eyes here, right? And other programs, what they'll have you do is select the eyes, and then you're just going to move through and select the nose, the mouth, and imagine doing that like 10 times, right? I mean, it's brutal, just to say the least, right? I don't want to do that. And in my process here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into Perfectly Clear, and in this case, we don't want plastic skin. We want texture in the skin, right? So I'm just going to right-click that out, Perfectly Clear, right? And you can also use export as well. I'm working on my laptop, so when I'm working on my laptop and I'm demoing at a conference or something, it's just easier for me in terms of the workflow here, right? I'm always exporting at this point into a corrected folder, so I know exactly where my image is. All right, and bring up Perfectly Clear. Okay, so here we have our image. Let me see here. So we got a little texture in her skin. Okay, so we're looking good. But you'll notice, okay, so that's the Perfectly Clear correction. I actually like that, right? I'm not going to do any more to it because I don't want her skin to be just too plastic. Hold on a second here. All right. We're trying. Okay, here we go. We got the spinnies going. Okay, so I'm just gonna go right here. I don't want her skin to look like that because on a print, I mean, it's not gonna look right, right? I want her skin to be somewhere around in here. I want this to show, but I don't want that to show so much, right? I can just go in here and basically adjust her eyes. So I'm gonna go right down the eyes, right? Dark circles, and I'm just gonna pull the slider to the right just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, probably about right there, because we want to see creases. We naturally see creases in the eyes, right? I'm going to click on presets and I'm out. And if she's looking this direction, right? Because usually if they're going, I do 5 left, 5 right, and I'll do some in this, like some dead on, right? I'll usually just process this all the way through because she's looking the same direction. It's going to be really easy. We can we can adjust her eyes. So we can go in here and we're just going to check on the box, adjust the eyes over, right? Dark circles, catch lights. Um, we can we can adjust all of that right here, and we can even create a preset for it with a description. And that's the thing that I like the most, because I could call this studio portrait, and then in description I could outline exactly what it is. All right, so that pretty much concludes my presentation, and I notice there's no questions there, so I'm assuming that I did a good job for you guys and you took something away from this. And we got about 3 minutes left. I'm just going to go back to the slides here. And let me just get this out of the way here. Let me go back to the slides. And um, the thing that I want you to know is there's a visual edit for correction, right, which I showed you. And there's also a straight in correction. And I showed you with that event. We did our edit on camera. We know that the lighting was good. We're going to take those straight in, right? We're going to process them in Perfectly Clear to make sure that the images are balanced. And then we're going to take them straight out to the client in a finals folder, keyword them, whatever we need to do, and go straight to the client, right? And that's how our workflow works. So we did our visual edit using the 3Cs, contrast, composition, and compelling, right? The image needs to be compelling, it needs to be well composed, and we want the perfect contrast, right? We flag it, we run it through Perfectly Clear, and then we exit out, literally. Then there's the creative edit where we might use Perfectly Clear to maybe fix a blemish or something like that. Maybe get the skin tone a little bit more imbalanced, right? And then we're going to take it out to a finishing product, that a finisher, like something that's going to give you a high key look. Maybe it's a Nick filter, maybe it's something along those lines that you want to use to basically create grain or whatever the case is. You're going to be starting or building on a better foundation than as if you just took it straight in with a color cast. So this is the foundation right here, the creative edit. You're in the field, right? And you white balance or you don't white balance. This is gonna save you. It's gonna lessen your workload. All right, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. Um, I'm going to be here for a couple minutes if you want to ask some questions. Um, I'm going to tell you this is my first webinar. It's definitely different than presenting to a group of people. I'm actually talking to a computer, so this is definitely an experience. Um, and if you have any questions, I'm going to bring up my social media page so you can see that if you're there. So I'm on Twitter, and I definitely talk about any new product developments that any company sponsoring me. They're coming out with a new product development or something or an ideal that they want you guys to know about. Facebook, Examiner.com is a great platform in terms of just kind of finding out what I'm talking about, and Pinterest, and good old Google Plus. All right. That's all I have for you guys. We got about a minute left. If you want to toss a question out at me, that sounds good. My next webinar is coming up on the 29th and at 3 o'clock. And each week, each webinar, I'm going to talk about something different in terms of like types of photography, street photography, um, street photography, and um, landscape photography as well. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I will be talking to you soon.